A Dunedin conservation worker is at the helm of international efforts to protect migratory New Zealand birds. Bruce McKinlay from the Department of Conservation has just returned from overseas and he's here to tell us about his work at home and abroad. Good evening, Bruce.
Good evening, Rebecca.
Now, what do you do at DOC?
My core role at DOC is as a technical advisor working on threatened species and ecosystems.
And which birds are you focused on?
In terms of migratory birds, it's bar-tailed godwit and the lesser knot.
And why are they in decline?
The best science that we've got is that declines in most shorebirds are happening, migratory shorebirds are happening because of reclamation and habitat change in the Yellow Sea.
And where has your work taken you recently?
Earlier in the year we were fortunate enough to run a 3-week trip to northern China and to North Korea.
And what were you doing there?
At northern China we were working with partners from Miranda Naturalist Trust who do a whole lot of shorebird work in New Zealand. And we were working with a sister site that they have up there where all the New Zealand godwits go. So in terms of migration, godwits go from New Zealand to northern China right up on the Korean border in one hit. And there's a big reserve there, and Miranda has spent many years working with the reserve managers at Yalujiang to document and record and monitor the birds there. And then we went from there to a series of meetings in Beijing with officials and partners to look at how we might work better together. And then we went to North Korea, where also New Zealand godwits go on their stopover to Alaska. And Miranda and the Nature Conservation Union for Korea signed an agreement to cooperate into the future.
How many godwits spend their summer in New Zealand?
About 80,000 godwits come back every year from the northern hemisphere. So their annual cycle is that the chicks are hatched on the northern slopes of Alaska. They congregate in southern Alaska, then they spend 12 days flying to New Zealand in one hit. They spend our summer here, and in March and April they head back north. They go to the northern Yellow Sea and then go across to Alaska and nest.
What will happen to them if the habitats keep changing?
Well, numbers are decreasing, so the risk is that with inappropriate land use change and reclamation in the Yellow Sea that we run the risk of extinction.
Are those issues being addressed?
Yes, the reserves that China has got are increasingly valued by China and the Chinese community. With economic development in China, there's now a middle class that's got time and leisure to enjoy the world around them. The people we met up there are mad keen photographers of birds and are interested. Reserve managers have a hard time balancing competing land use, ports and reclamation. But increasingly the Chinese Communist Party and now the government are trying to figure out how to balance economic and environmental needs in China.
What would you like to see happen?
Well, I'd like to see New Zealand and Australia and other members of the East Asian Australasian Flyway work with China and North Korea to protect the core reserve areas that these birds need on their migratory routes. So that they're not the migration pattern is maintained and these important iconic species continue to stay with us.
Why is it important to retain the migration patterns?
Well, migration is actually one of the great biological features of the planet Earth, and the East Asian Australasian Flyway is one of about 7 big flyways, migratory pathways that girdle the world, and with birds moving in and out of breeding areas to stopovers and adapting as the seasons go by. So they're an indicator overall of the state of the planet's health. And if we start to lose these things, not only do we lose iconic species like godwits, but also in the East Asian Australasian Flyway, cranes, waterfowl, seabirds all start to become extinct because their migratory pathways fall apart. If that starts to happen, then you're starting to really see the biological diversity of the planet Earth become under threat at a global scale.
Bruce McKinlay from the Department of Conservation, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.